So
unchanged. There are things that are really stable. It's not a
Yeah.
variable anymore. It's a stationed thing.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, I can see that if we learn history, then we absolutely can see that after every age, Bronze Age, Golden Age, and then Industrial Era, something will replace something, and then people. The nice thing about I realize as a human is that humans are really adaptive. They're really quick at adapt to new changes.
Absolutely. And older people are really
Yes,
good at adapting.
yes.
And people sometimes don't look at it like that. Very often, better
Yes,
than younger people. So yeah, you're absolutely right. So I think we have to be very open in terms of our understanding. I mean, the challenge for human beings, genuinely, is that we can manage to keep our planet in a livable way, that we can continue to live on this planet, that we don't destroy it ecologically.
SDG 30.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is really, really important. And we also have to learn to live with each other. And the Delors report of 1996 spoke about all of that. We have to be tolerant of other people. We have to be tolerant of different religions, different political views, different linguistic groups, different skin colors, different genders. All of these things are important. And, what disturbs me a little bit is that more and more people seem to be articulating a fixed view of the world. We hate all X. We hate all Y. We don't like, people because of their gender. We don't like people because of the color of their skin. We don't like people because of the language they speak. We don't like people because of their religion. What is that about? How does that benefit anybody? And it's kind of a collective delusion. And I think this is where lifelong learning really has an important role to play, to help people to escape from the shackles of seeing the world in such binary and divisive and destructive ways, and to begin to see the world with all the wonderful possibilities that exist in it. Yes. How we as human beings can work with each other, live with each other, enjoy life with each other, support each other in all the myriad ways that we can do that. And that really, for me, is a really important challenge in lifelong learning. And I hope through the Lifelong Learning Hub that we're creating opportunities for people to see how lifelong learning can fit into that, and we can come up with new and better ways of reaching more and more people in terms of that kind of agenda. And there's a big pressure on governments and policymakers as well in terms of lifelong learning, that they see the wider opportunities of lifelong learning. Very often they get dragged into a kind of what I would call a rabbit hole around skills, where they only see skills, and skills are really, really important. But there's more to the world than skills. We are human beings. We need to live together, and so on and so forth. So I think that's a big, big challenge as well.
I think that is the challenge ASEM is facing when we're trying to bring lifelong learning practices to Asia.
You talked about older people in Asia. Older people, having a lot of older people in your population is positive. It means that people live longer. They live healthily longer. So that is a really, really, really positive thing. So that means that you, as a young person, can say, maybe Asian society is a place where I can live a long and healthy life. Yes. Every day and every hour that you get to live longer is, a gift that's beyond anything else. So that's a really positive side. In relation to what's happening in Asia, I think maybe people in Asia don't quite realize how dynamic and how innovative a lot of what's happening there is. certain Europeans don't quite realize it. So, I mean, I mentioned 2 projects that I saw in particular. There are hundreds of thousands of these kinds of projects. One in Thailand and one in Philippines. These were community education projects. And they were dealing with all ages. They were dealing with little kids, toddlers, parents, grandparents, old people, young people, everybody in between. And everybody was involved in those projects. Everybody was contributing. Everybody was learning. All of the societies, all of the communities they were living in were directly benefiting from their collective learning together. So what I think is important is that we create the opportunities, that spotlights are shone upon these really outstanding examples of good practice. And that governments begin to appreciate more really what's happening in their own societies in terms of creating resilience, creating opportunities around work, around social life, around the quality of life, about people living good, fruitful, flourishing lives. I think that's really, really, really important. And I think, you know, if we can start to do that through the ASEM Lifelong Learning Hub, well, then I think we're getting to a good place. But I think we have to, I suppose, stop seeing lifelong learning as only adult education, number one, and only around skills, number two. You know, it's a bigger project than that.
Well, that is a little, say, a lot to my small mind, because see, I still think lifelong learning as learning a skill, and I think that is pretty much all of how, let's say, Asians. I cannot speak on the behalf of Asians, but this is how I was brought up. Is that okay? Lifelong education, adult education. You will learn a skill to as a way for you to make a living in this world, just in case of anything.
Yeah, no, look, I'm absolutely, look, I understand why skills are important. Don't get me wrong. Skills are really important. It's really important to give people opportunities to learn skills. But we have to think, what skills are we talking about, number one? And we also have to ask the question, you know, somebody who has very little formal education, maybe they have low levels of literacy, you know, how can they acquire skills to work, we'll say, in a high-tech company like Apple Computers or Dell or some other company like that, at the high end of that industry, in terms of maybe software design and things like that, you know? So you take a 50-year-old woman, let's say, who has low levels of literacy, very little formal education. Now, what skills is she going to get to give her a job in one of those places? How long would it take her to do it? You know, so we have to be creative here. We have to think this thing through in a little bit more sophistication. We can help that woman to acquire skills. Of course we can. We can help that woman to acquire other educational things that enhance her own life and enhance the lives of the people around her. She might be a parent or a grandparent. It might, that through that process, maybe she can keep her children or grandchildren in education, maybe her siblings, and so on and so forth. So, you know, we have to be really open-minded. And I was in a European country a few years ago, and we were looking at statistics around lifelong learning. And I'm looking at the figures, and I then asked the question, I said, any question? And I said, does everybody in this country die at 65? And they said, sorry, why are you asking that question? I said, your statistics only go to 65. Does everybody die at 65? And it's crazy. It's completely crazy. I was at a presentation in Asia, as it happened, and the person was talking about their country, and they were talking about the number of people who were engaged in lifelong learning. And they gave a figure. I can't remember what the figure was. So I said, look, I'm sorry, but your figures are wrong. And they looked and said, no, our figures are not wrong, you know. I said, absolutely, they're wrong. And they said, why did you say that? Because I said, the number of people engaged in lifelong learning in your country is 100%. Human beings are learning all the time. We never stop learning.
I mean, we never.
So when we start talking about lifelong learning, we have to acknowledge that those kind of facts. People don't stop at 65, and everybody is learning all of the time. If somebody gets a new phone, if you put a new doorbell on your door, if you get a new electric kettle, a new coffee maker, a new frying pan, a new pair of shoes, a new car, everything, you have to learn something about how to use that.
Definitely.
So it doesn't matter where you are or who you are or what you are constantly learning. There's always new things coming your way. So we're always lifelong learners. And like that's where we need to get to understand that that's what we need to be helping people, that in that lifelong learning journey, that we're creating things that really add value to them in terms of what they're learning.
Yes. No, absolutely. That's absolutely right. The thing is, that brings me down to my last questions, actually, is that as much as they can see the benefit of lifelong learning, and they absolutely can see that it boils down to the smallest thing that they do every day, they still learn how to use something. It's sort of hard to persuade them or make them trust in us, that, or in ASEM, for example, that, hey, we come up with this, we are providing you with this practice, but it will not be applicable if they probably, say the Asians, for example, that they don't have that solid trust in us yet to really consider our recommendations or our practices. So how would you, if you go and persuade the Asians, for example, how would you build the trust? How do you build the foundation of trust? And better yet, to build a partnership with them? How would you do it?
Yeah, look, I suppose, I mean, the old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. So we have to continue to talk to people and engage with people and demonstrate that, that lifelong learning is really about change. It's about resilience. It's about giving people coping mechanisms. It's about people being able to live better and longer lives. It improves people's health. It improves their outlook in the world. It gives them opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have. And that's really, really important. It applies to everybody. So it's not, we have to, of course, persuade policymakers. We also have to persuade educators. Educators sometimes are, a little bit rigid in their thinking as well. And a lot of educators see what they do as the whole picture, which, of course, it absolutely is not. It's just a tiny fragment of what is involved. So, and learners, very often if you speak to people, and if we go back to our 50-year-old woman again, and you ask her, when was the last time you were involved in lifelong learning? She'll say, oh, I left school when I was 11. I didn't learn anything since then. And she actually kind of believes that in some way.
Oh, no.
So we need to help people to understand as well themselves that they are actually learning and they are engaged in learning all of the time, and that they are capable of learning. Because this is the other thing. We hear it all the time. Somebody who's 35 and they say, well, it's too late for me now. I can't learn. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, and so on and so forth, which is completely crazy, because I have a little painting here in my house that my mother did. She started to paint, I'd say, when she was at least in her 80s. She never, I mean, she painted doors and windows and gates, but she didn't do any artistic painting right throughout her entire life.
And then one day she decided to pick up a brush and...
Well, I think she went to a daycare center and they were doing art. And she said, well, why not? And then she did. It's a beautiful picture. It's one of my favorite pictures. Of course, it's not going to be hanging in the Louvre. I understand that. But it has meaning. It has meaning for her. It has meaning for me. And I can see, what she was achieving in this. And I can see her in that picture. So we can learn all throughout our lives. And I think it was Bertolt Brecht who said that, we can begin again, and we can begin again right up to our final breath. And he's absolutely right. We can learn and do things right till the end of our lives, and right from the very, very beginning of our lives.
Well, if it's about the painting, I'd say taste and beauty, it's subjective. Doesn't have to be in the Louvre, but it can still be the best paintings ever. Guarantee you that.
The point is that there is no one answer. There is no one approach. Lots of really exciting and dynamic things are happening in Asia. Of course, they can't be 100% transferred to Europe, but lessons from them can be transferred to Europe, and vice versa. And I think that's really the space we're in, to look at the different, good examples, look at what works well, look at what the theories are, and, to I suppose, to be influencers in that sense across the whole ASEM region. And that's really our function and role. And of course, some governments and some policymakers and some educationalists and some community groups will engage with us more actively than others will. And that's the nature of the world. We can only do what we can do. We try our best. And as I said, every one of us, if we set out to try and make the world better for everybody else we encounter, then we can change the whole thing and make it a whole lot better for absolutely everybody.